Okay, Gladys, over to you now. We are strapped for time, and the IEBC was, of course, picking the 17th of October as now the date for elections. Were they really also not considering a raft of issues, putting the house in order as well, and also the timelines that they've presented with us, the timetable itself?
I would trust that the Electoral Commission knows what they're doing, because usually as an election manager, I've been there before, you pick the date of the election, then work backwards and see if you need 20 days or 30 days, that's how you decide the election date. And you know exactly how many days each of the activities require. And as you can see in the timelines that you've presented there, they will tell you this will take a day, this will take 2 days. So I think they are perfectly within the time. And as we go through this election timeline, I think I'll use the opportunity to convince my friend and someone I held with high esteem, Professor Nyong'o, on this one. Right now, I'm telling myself, yes, we have to run the election. But we have to ask ourselves, what are we working with? This is the number of days we have. Within this number of days, what can we do? All of us as patriotic Kenyans are people who love our country and who want to have an election. What do we need to do? And I think if you look at the timelines, we have an opportunity at every spot to be able to work with it. If you look at the first activity, when they talk about having the policy framework in place, we can participate as political parties. And in fact, I would suggest that NASA provides a team, let Jubilee provide a team, who will sit together be the liaison team with IEBC. So that when they're working on any policy framework, we make sure that everybody's interest is taken care of and there is nothing for anyone to fear. The register of voters is also something that is in the timelines. If you look at it, point 2 of the timelines. Again, when the register of voters is put out, again, and I think I'm happy about what you're saying, that you discovered there were 600 people missing from the register. Now that we know that, I hope you have taken the 600 names to IEBC. No, we need to take them to IEBC now, so that we make sure that these people are put back on the register if they were missing. So even us as Kenyans, we have a responsibility as voters. And as political parties, let's help IEBC to deliver this. So let's go through the register. And that's why we kept on saying, people must be asked to check their names on the register during the time of verification. If you go the planning meetings, IEBC will have various planning meetings, etc. Let's make sure that even us as political parties, and right now it's just two teams, we can make sure that we attend the planning meetings, or at least we get briefings of what IEBC is planning. Because if IEBC wants people not to be suspicious of them, let them be transparent. We learned those lessons in 2010, and I think you know. Yeah, Honorable Malim knows that. I think Professor knows that. We used to call political parties to IEBC and say, this is what we are doing. This is how we plan to do it. This is where we have challenges, and this is where we can fix it, and this is where we can't fix it. So that even as we go to the election, you know that we have that challenge ahead of us. Then it doesn't become an issue for us to petition against the results. We can be able to discuss and find a middle ground. We go to the next one about voter education and observation. One of the things IEBC has to do now in its timelines is to appoint accredited observers. Again, this is our opportunity, and I had it there. If NASA has a problem with some observers, just let IEBC know. They don't have to be accredited. You know, we're not saying we're letting them choose whom they want, but at least if that is going to cause this country more delays in having an election, let's do it. And and then also there's going to be the recruitment and training and deployment of returning officers. Again, we said the mistakes that people have raised happened in the field, not at headquarters. So here we are losing focus here. It was the presiding officers. And remember, the presiding officers are not permanent officials of IEBC. It's only the returning officers who are. So what we should do is, again, let's publish the list of all the people who are being appointed as presiding officers and as returning officers. If you have a problem in Kisumu, Professor Young, say we'll have an opportunity. I think that is the way we should go forward as a country. And say, I don't like the following persons, I don't think they should be put in as presiding officers.
That did not work this time around. It
didn't work.
No, but I'm saying we are in...
This time around, you see, you're right. You're saying headquarters is not the problem is the ground. The headquarters sent in specific returning officers with specific instructions to go and bring so-and-so, deliver so-and-so. And that person works directly. Even the last time, you did a very good job at the headquarters. But then what did you do? What happened is that then you allowed members of who are running for these different seats to literally bring their people as election officials on the ground.
then this is how we can counter it. Because again, like we said, elections is a process. It's not about just one group of people. So if we think we have a problem here, we can find a way of countering it. For example, we must make sure now as political parties that you have your agents deployed to the ground, to every polling station, properly trained, and try and make sure that they are able to report to you at every stage.
It never worked this time. With the security
We have to
machinery,
try.
with the election officials, with everybody, they kick them out, they beat the hell out of them, and they remain alone, one side, and then they just manufacture
I
all
always
the
believe,
disaster.
I'm an optimist,
That's
I always
what
believe we can try and fix a system if we talk about
You
it.
see the system, the same fixers of the system are the ones who are messing the system. So there's no way you can fix it.
And then, and just let me say lastly on this one, even the printing of ballot papers.
Let me just say something about returning officers, privatizing officers. So long as you allow the National Intelligence Service to interfere with IEBC work, we'll never get the returning officer, providing officer equation correct. What Farah is saying is very true. We had a big problem with returning officer Moroni, who could not listen to anybody. The only people who should listen were the police.
Okay, but suppose, what solution do you want? Change that returning officer?
No, what I'm saying, it's not so much individuals. I think this is why you come to the process.
The system.
The process of identifying, placing, and safeguarding
deploying.
the interests of the voters. Okay, it's the interest of voters which is important. So that the returning officers, you can get a returning officer in Mombasa to go and be a returning officer in Kisumu. So that he has no relationship whatsoever with local politics.
And you said that is, and they said that is too expensive because we had said get all the officials for Garissa, for example, county, from Wajir. And the ones for Wajir, take them from Garissa and Mandera, shuffle them like that. And they said we don't have the money. We're only paying what they call the election officials, 1,000 or 2,000 shillings a day just for that day. And that's when you find somebody who's earning 300,000 goes there as an election official. Why would he go? Because he doesn't want the 1,000 shillings. He goes there because he has a mission. And then they went and recruited for whoever they had as a favored or favorite, what they call candidates, all his officials there. Frustrated
but let's
the process in the strongholds of the opponent and literally had a field day.
With a lot of respect, I don't want to agree on the issue that only one person can make a difference in a polling station. All of us know that when you get to the polling station, you put your fingerprint and it picks up your details and your photograph. And then it ticks you off the list, and then you're able to get the ballot paper. The agents for each of the political parties.
In court.
Just a moment, Farah.
Gladys, I don't want to tell you what happened there.
So are you saying we're not capable of having an election?
All right. I want us to just focus on the timelines a bit. Let's not go on to see what was happening in the polling station.
Yes.
But before you go on, Mdomi, you had something to say, just briefly?
This issue of friends as returning officers or who people I don't like as returning officers, you will never get your friends all over Kenya to be returning officers. That is why in a polling station we have a big battalion of officials, including the agents for every candidate.
And they can't all collude. It's an impossibility.
It's not possible for us to have all of them colluding. And that is why they're there. So as long as these presiding officers and ROs are Kenyans, let them get an opportunity to serve. It doesn't matter whether you like them or not. The idea is, do they follow the law and what has been put in place?
What we should be interrogating is the system that they are using.
The system is there, and listen, I'll just give you one example. You have somebody who's supposed to check on the fingerprints at the KIMS.
Yes.
But you have somebody who knows basically what to do. It's a stronghold of somebody they want. They do this, they move. For you to say that so and so has voted, there must be a validation there. Supposing a validation is not done.
But let me ask a question.
How many times can that person come back, if I may ask you?
Then that should be evidence that the agents have. Because I hear about all this.
The agents are there. The agents are there.
All right, thank you.
Now that means you didn't train your agents properly and they're not vigilant.
The agents are not supposed to come to where that thing is there. The agents are far.
Thank you. We don't live in another continent, Mars. We live in Kenya. The point that the NASA colleagues are saying it's factual. It's factual because Professor also said it. Particularly if you come from strongholds, if you come from Nyanza, if you come from Central, it's not unusual to expect that all the agents, all the returning officers, as expected, all the observers would do duty and fairness, justice to what's expected of them. So that this happens I mean, in certain places it's true. You find either agents are compromised, returning officers, presiding officers, and other election officials compromised, or even outright kicked out. But what would be more useful is, were there reports, were there complaints that are filed so that action is taken along such? Also, I would make an appeal to the election observers that perhaps rather than spreading out thin everywhere in the country, there are particular trouble spots. Yeah. And in this particular case, we know where the trouble spots are. Why don't they concentrate in those areas so that, of course, I also know they can't go to literally every polling center, but they can go to good samples enough so that if there's irregularities, it's not just what one may call hearsay, but there's evidence. Also, in as much as the Supreme Court did invalidate the elections, I don't think the Supreme Court said somebody was rigged in. Because we really don't know. The truth is we don't know who won, we don't know who lost. By invalidating the election, it's not that one party lost who was declared won, who was declared winner. And lastly, I wanted to disagree a little bit with my sister in terms of systems versus people. In fact, systems include the people. As of now, and I wouldn't really say that the problem is at the ground rather than the headquarters, because that information is still not available with us. If information is being relayed from the ground to the tallying center, this interference could have happened at any point. It could have happened at the point of entry, being typed at the polling center. It could have been doctored as it was traveling, transiting. It could be at the end of reception. For now, the truth is we don't know until the Supreme Court gives us that full judgment.
All right. And until a full audit is done. And also just remember that the point I was trying to make when I talk about systems versus people here, I'm saying even if you get rid of Ezra Chiloba or Immaculate Kasait or whoever within the headquarters, that doesn't help you in the 40,000 polling stations where you're saying you have a problem. That doesn't help you. So I think the issue we should be asking ourselves, we have kept on changing commissioners. We have, as Governor Mudomi here said, but nothing changes. So we should be asking ourselves, we should counter it. And it is possible to counter it. I don't believe, I'm not that pessimistic to say that there is nothing we can do, it will be stolen anyway. No. I remember myself, personally, I had that when during the Jubilee nominations, I was a little worried about the process. What I did is I deployed agents. I had an agent down the road who counted how many people walked into the polling station, did a head count for me. And I said, I want to know how many people walked into the polling stations, how many walked out. And then after that, I had the agent inside who counted how many people have also collected their ballot papers and actually put them in. Then, based on those reports, I knew I was preparing myself in case I had a problem. So even this, I'm asking NASA, stop complaining. Try and also put in systems to try and counter any problem that might arise. Because we can't be sitting and saying they'll steal anyway, the NIS is involved, because I think that is almost like you've given up, you know, on this country. Then don't participate in the election.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Look, please.
What about when you have a commissioner who is compromised?
No. Let me just tell you that.
You can deal with it and you can raise it.
Gladys.
We've raised it.
Gladys, we are talking about the process and the personnel. And the point I'm making is based in concrete evidence. I was in Kisumu when it was reported, and in Kisumu East constituency, the returning officer had disappeared. So nothing was going on at the county center. We had to go there, call the returning officer, the county returning officer, to come Kisumu East and solve the problem, because nobody had the powers to let anything go on without the county returning. He did come. That was after a lot of time had passed. And he did find that deputy returning officer to take over, because he had the powers to do that. While we were there, we are told that the returning officer in Moroni constituency has refused our agents to enter the counting hall. We had then to finish this one, drive to Moroni, start the hold for 5 hours. We found that our agents were outside. The police were standing at the door. They couldn't allow them in. So these are part of the process and the personnel that we must solve ahead of time.
And that process...
Look, just be patient. At the headquarters, are they deliberating in Naivasha? They should ask themselves, one, what is the role of the police in safeguarding elections? Secondly, at what point should a returning officer or even a presiding officer enjoy the powers of excluding agents from entering a polling station? Okay? Now, it happens so frequently that this must be resolved prior to the election being held. And if the IEBC is in the habit of hiring returning officers or presiding officers who feel that when they go to the station, they completely forget election laws, and they implement their own laws by excluding agents, even if you have it. For them, our agents in Burundi were very senior people. One of them had been a minister in the county government, and they were excluded by the police, physically.
Okay, let me explain
just 1
this.
minute.
Okay, then we need to give Gladys the time also to give us the presentation
with
of
all
the
due
timeless.
respect to my fellow governor, my brother, Nyong'o. The role of the police in a police station is not to be able to identify agents and be able to let them, even at the polling station, not to identify the agents at the polling station. Their is to keep order, to ensure that we don't have any fracas.
And they didn't.
And that is why we do have a requirement by IEBC that you must have not only the introduction letter, you must also have the oath that has been taken by the agents to actually be able to be in the database of those agents that are allowed in by IEBC. Even in Tharaka-Nithi County, we had our agents locked out who did not have proper papers to be able to enter.
My brother.
It does not mean that if somebody is very famous and is known to be a former member of parliament or is a known personality
I think,
in the
we need
village.
to bring back this conversation.
Let me finish.
I want to
Just finish.
by saying that IEBC did a very good job in making sure that we reshuffle the ROs all over the country. In Tharaka-Nithi County, a very good gentleman by the name of Bonyo.
Governor, let me request you something.
Fantastic job.
Thank you.
In ensuring that we had elections carried out in the peaceful manner, in the right manner.
Thank you. But you know that now is history.
Yes,
let's see when we're moving forward. Yeah, you continue.
Okay, let us put this this way. I think this show.
Gladys,
just a moment,
please. Not that these people did not have papers. They had the papers. They were bona fide agents. And I had to travel there to go and
Prof.
Okay, we are getting exactly.
Just a moment. No.
There were separate rules of engagement.
But let's put this back.
And for the rest of us, because
Let's put it this way. I think Dubal knows. I have declined to come on any talk show because I say I don't like talking about problems or whining and complaining.
We are not whining.
I want us to say this is the problem. We've made the complaint. The complaint is known, and the complaint. But the complaint has gone as far as the Supreme Court.
Please don't use those words. We are not whining. We are putting problems.
But I'm saying today is not the date for that because we are past
that.
that.
All right, thank you. Okay, Gladys. All right, Prof.
We are not whining.
We should be telling ourselves this has happened.
Yes.
What are the solutions we should put in place?
But we have to know what the problems
and we have
are.
That. We know the problems already.
So
they were
what
presented before the Supreme Court.
All right,
I think
you.
those problems have
Prof,
already been discussed.
Can we just give Gladys her head right now to tell us now?
Those problems have been discussed. I'm sorry about that.
Be simple about that. We are not whining. We can't be whining here.
All right, thank you.
We are complaining about something that happened.
We're stating the problems.
Okay, now we know the problems.
Okay, these are just semantics. All right, thank you. Gladys.
I'm sorry about that, Professor.
No, she can't assume that.
I'm sorry, Professor.
Prof, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, Professor.
Yeah, she's apologized. Prof. Okay, Gladys. Continue, because I'm interested to know also, because I don't know where we left it at. We were at the point of...
now we get to the next stage, which is the training of agents, and that's why we've said this is where the agents help us. We have to train our agents, we have to make them extra vigilant, we have to let them know. Because we already anticipate, the way you've stated the fact that these are the challenges that existed. Now knowing that those challenges exist, during the training of the agents, we have to make sure that our agents understand this. We remember that even the police officers, we have to make sure they are informed not to block agents out of the station. And by the way, Professor, you're not the only one who had that challenge. I also had to go many times to various polling stations where I was called and told our agents have been refused to get in. And I would go there and make sure they get in.
What is the rhyme or reason
we shouldn't be
preventing
doing
the agents?
I think what I realize is that when you run an election, you hire so many people, and there are some people who just have bad personalities. Haven't you gone to a building and the askari refuses to let you in? So it's personalities. So if you manage people, we have that challenge.
So it's not politically instigated at all?
I had that challenge. I had exactly what he's describing. I had the same problem in Tarbo constituency. I had to go there myself.
Just give her a head fast.
I had exactly the same problem. They wouldn't let the agents in. The police were... In fact, at some point, I told a police officer, don't touch anyone. And stop behaving like that. I had to intervene. So it does happen. It's not unique to one place. We have that challenge all over the country.
All right.
But it shouldn't be there in the first place.
It should not be there, but you will find them.
Part of the wrong
Can you just give Gladys
and that's why we
her
should
head
work
to...
on minimizing that issue.
Let Gladys have her head to complete the timelines so that we can actually get to discuss these things properly.
And that's why if we have that joint team, we are able to say, these are the requirements, the police are informed, they cannot stop agents, they cannot do this. If we talk about it now and send out the instructions now and say it loud and clear, as both Jubilee and NASA, it will not happen. Fantastic. We have to try. We can't give up until one day we'll have a perfect system and people who are better behaved when we are in elections. And after the training of the agents, there is a procurement and distribution of election materials.
All right.
Again,
before we go to the procurement, because I can see, I want to refer you to this 5, and I think it's there on the screen. Voter education and observation. And we have accreditation of VE providers. Then we have accreditation of domestic and international observers. And this also has been a bone of contention from, of course, NASA as well. And we saw the way they went and they were jumping the gun and declaring, you know, that it was fair and credible, without even also making sure that the transmission itself was complete. So was this an early judgment call, so to speak, from the observers? And if they're here, of course, in the timelines, it's not stipulated in the Constitution anyway that we should have observers, isn't it?
No, but observers are actually part of the election process.
The election
part
process.
of the process. And then what should happen, and we see most observers give their reports at intervals. Some may give a report in terms of saying the election operation has begun well, polling stations opened well. They can give that statement. Later they can give a statement that in their view, and that's why you should have as many observers as possible, because that way you can, even if one has a different opinion, you will hear the other saying something different. Because that's why you don't have only one group. We have both the local ones who know the ground maybe more specifically. So I think the more observers we have, the better.
Thank you.
And I think people should nominate more observers.
Can I ask a question?
To be able to
yes.
These timelines we are discussing, you know, it came out at a time when there was discord in IEBC. Do we assume it's the official one? My second question is that as the team meets in Naivasha, are they likely to come with a revised timeline?
Timelines.
Part of why I ask this is, while the 60 days is cast in stone, the October 17th isn't. So the October 17th could still be a discussion, in which case I appreciate that we are discussing this, but let's be alive to the fact that this may not be the final timeline that IEBC will produce, knowing the circumstances in which it came out.
I think the activities are the activities won't change. The activities are basically the same.
Just the timeline.
Yeah, it's only the timeline. So
Sure.
maybe something was 6 days, it might change to 4 days. If something was 10 days, it might change to 8 days. I mean, but I don't think the activities will change at all. And we'll see when I run up to the election, they kept on making that change, and they can put, even the election timeline, they can decide to do a corrigenda in the Kenya Gazette, you know, after discussions with, because remember when you said, yes, you're right, stakeholders have to discuss it, and they might sit together with the political parties, but also sit with the Ministry of Education, because they use the schools.
But was it a premature for IEBC to make this or declare that particular date? Because it seems they've declared a date, they don't have the timelines in place as yet, they've not done a lot, then we have a date, now they're working backwards.
No, I think you can almost estimate how many days you need to run a presidential election. Because remember, they're not procuring the booths anymore, so it's very few things that they need to procure. And then you're looking at it's the ballot papers, you're just printing presidential ballot papers, which means it's much easier. And that brings us to the issue of printing and packaging, which is a major issue in the timeline. And in fact, this is where, again, so that we don't have the problem that we had, that political parties should make sure that they participate in that. The way, as the court had said last time, they make sure they know, and I would advise that even political parties should actually send their representative to the printing plant, because during printing, what is really important is the packaging. It's not the printing, it's the packaging, because the distribution is done according to the packaging, so that you can know in advance from the time they leave the printing plant how many ballot papers are going right to the polling stations, because they are packaged right to the polling station at the printing plant, so that you have the packaging list and distribution, because I think that's a way of also holding IEBC to account, because we have said all of us have to be vigilant.
Right, thank you.
So,
Farah, you have a question?
Yeah. No, Gladys, I understand the way you're coming from, and I respect all these brilliant ideas you have. But let me tell you exactly, those of you who come from strongholds, those who come from Rift Valley, they know invariably it's somebody from Jubilee who will be there. Those who come from Nyanza, invariably, is somebody in NASA who is going to there. Those of us who come from the battlegrounds, the way you are saying things right now is, tantamount to the girl who said, why should people complain that there's no bread? Why can't they eat cake? You know what I mean? When the whole structure, the whole system is designed in advance, from the CID officers, you know what I mean, to the security, to the provincial administration, to the police, police, and everybody is already put in place.
So what can we do about it?
I mean, it's impossible. The way it is right now, sometimes I even think maybe we should go back to the system we had when Kenyatta was there. When Kenyatta was there, the first Kenyatta, as long as you don't have a problem with his sit there, you don't try and run for the presidency. He allowed everything else to be free and fair. Any election that was done under his moment, other than denying the KPU guys from running for elections. But then, even if you're a minister and you're very close to him and the people reject you on the ground, he used to tell you, okay, if they reject you, it's
but what can we do about that?
But
how
you see, right now, because we came up with a multi-party system where the president has to depend on an MCA who is there on the ground, and then the president, all the way from up there to the lowest down here, there's a conspiracy.
Yes.
We have a system. These people, Jubilee had the instruments of government, and they used it to the full extent. In Eastern Province, there were elections. The provincial administration played havoc. The system was all changed. Say the officers, senior officers who are Luo, who are Luya, who are Kisi, who were removed. And they replaced them with the two the communities we know. Right. And see, there you are. Your people are arrested a day before that. They are arrested in the election itself. They are arrested when the agents from inside there.
Thank you.
So when the whole system, when the NIS is there, the CID is there, the police is there, provincial administration is there, the IEBC is compromised and it belongs to the system, then there can never be any election.
Can I suggest what can be done in terms of solution?
Yeah.
I think in the timelines, there is the provision for regulations being reviewed. I think because there is so much distrust, we need to be, as ordinarily it's not good to be very prescriptive, but I think in these circumstances we need to. In fact, and let me emphasize the point of process, the process flow and process management. For the time being, it said once the Form 34A is signed, is written, drawn, and maybe even countersigned by the agents, that it's entered into the system and transmitted. Nothing says, who knows that what is in the Form 34A is actually what's keyed in. Currently, there's no requirement. The presiding officer can do that on his own or her own. So let's be prescriptive. The Parliament has an opportunity to look at these revised regulations, all these problems that our friends are talking about. And with due respect, I'm surprised.
Can also put it in their guidelines.
I'm surprised that in Nyanza, the problem could be with NASA agents being locked out, because ordinarily the people power is such that it's Jubilee agents who would be locked out and NASA agents locked out in Central. That's the norm. But again, if there are certain guidelines, let's be prescriptive. What the police are able to do, what can they not do, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
In the revised law.
Moshimo, can I just give you just complete
on
also
the last
on your
one,
presentation?
Yes, I'm on the last
Very
one.
briefly on the last one.
On the last one is, and I think that's where one is the regulations you've said, and then there's also going to be these timelines for the upgrade and configuration of the KIM system. And I think that's where we come in, because that's where we had the biggest complaints. So now we don't have to wait until we have a petition to say where are the systems, how does it work, etc. They are going to be upgraded. They're all going to be redeployed back to headquarters. I think we should also participate in that process.
But can I just raise an issue? Remember, the contention in the Supreme Court case were three things: KIAMS, transmission of Forms 34A,
yes,
and the servers.
Yes.
Okay? Now, in cleaning up things so that we have an election in which all parties have confidence, you say that KIAMS will be brought, people want to look at it. The issue of how, what Shem is saying, how are the Form 34As, whatever you call them now, but I believe they remain 34As, will be transmitted, that whole thing must be ascertained to the satisfaction of all parties. Thirdly, the servers were supposed to be opened with the technical teams from both parties to ensure that the servers that were used to bangle the elections are not the same servers, nor are they going to be used in the same way. And fourthly, which is very important, a court ruled that the printing firm, Al-Ghurair, should not be used for printing ballot papers. The IEBC went against that. They actually disobeyed a court order, and still went ahead and printed ballot papers from that
Al-Ghurair
firm. That issue has been raised, and it looks as if the IEBC is still refusing to use a different firm. My suggestion would be that the parties concerned should get together with the IEBC and agree all together where and who is going to print the ballot papers. So that this Al-Ghurair business does not again pollute the waters.
I thought the Al-Ghurair issue was resolved by the court.
Could I assist
the court settled that.
Could I assist on the technology aspects, because those are key issues.
All right. Before we come, I want Gladys to actually complete on the presentation.
So there are two main activities, which I think which is the printing of the ballot papers and the upgrade of the KIM system being reconfigured and then distributed back to the field. Again, because they will be out here and they would normally be taken to Bomas or some big place where it's almost like a hall where everyone is, I think that's where the political parties can be involved, because you're allowed to say, and each of your agents a few of your agents can be there, and they can be shown and told exactly what the KIM system does. It identifies voters, it traces the flow of the voters, and then we make sure that the results of how many people have voted, the flow of voters, is not only communicated to Bomas, but also communicated to the constituency level for people to be able to see it. Then that way we can check the system at every stage, which leaves no room for anyone to manipulate anything.
Thank you.
So that we are not suspicious.
So we're expecting from your board's simplicity, accuracy, accountability, transparency.
And transparency, I've said that let's open up the tallying center so that everybody, and at the constituency level, and they can say, and then also the recruitment of the officials, and we can do that. And then when it comes to verifying, we should make sure that our agents are properly trained to be able to ask the right questions. And if we say this time it's going to be easy, because we can have the results or the flow of voters to be communicated directly from the polling station to the constituency. So I think we should focus this time on the constituency as opposed to Bomas.
Right, thank you. Gladys, thank you very much for that presentation.